What's up, YouTubers? Today we're going to talk about the myth of the Holy Trinity. Chris Reeve, Mick Strider, and Rick Hinderer and I. It's not a myth. It's just, when I say the myth of the Holy Trinity, the myth is that they're any more special at this point in the golden age of knife manufacturing, making, design, history, even to some degree. It's really just what made up. In short, the Holy Trinity was somebody coined it probably because these were the three designers, makers, manufacturers of high-end knives going back, I don't know, 20 years, maybe more, 30 years ago. Before I was even like a nut. I basically grew up a Spyderco guy because I was right near Golden, Colorado, and that's all I knew is, those were just fine. It wasn't until, I don't know, 14 years ago-ish, I started finding, a little bit higher end knives, and then it was probably about 8 years ago, maybe 10, I started investing, or if you want to call it buying, into some good knives. This is the Chris Reeve Sabenza. This is not an SNG. I mean, this is not a Strider SNG. This is a ProTech. I refuse to actually buy a Strider SNG, and we're going to talk about that. Why I just want, if I come across one for a really good price, that's fine. I just, $800 it's outside the range of what I consider a kind of a fairly vanilla. Sometimes it's in like the $600 range, but you're getting G10 titanium on one side, a frame lock, usually a decent steel, decently heat treated, but I don't know. It's just one of those things where, for me, value comes into play for my Holy Trinity. And then Rick Hinderer, this is the XM24 with an aftermarket scale. So I call it the XM27 because just about all things are proportionally compared to the XM18, that much larger, more expensive, etc., and so forth, materials. It just so happened. So all that basically, like I said, just a reiteration, is the Holy Trinity is not any official anything. There's no Hall of Fame for knives, as far as I'm aware. Let me know if there is in the comments below, but I don't think there is a Hall of Fame for like knives, knife making, knife design. There's basically what we have. The community of people that are interested, enthusiasts, knife makers, knife reviewers, materials makers, knife steel nerds, people that are designing and crafting metals so that we have better knives and so forth. So the Holy Trinity was, Chris Reeve, it came out of South Africa, and really, I think I guess the other part of this is the Holy Trinity is that these are like the three manufacturers that you knew that you had reached the promised land of knife collecting and or purchasing is when you had any one of these three. But like I said, and I was going to talk about it before, and I'll talk about it now, is I never really have bought a Strider knife. Would I if the right deal came along? But the answer is they don't. I don't see one, for myself that would be kind of in a similar price range to, let's say an equivalent Chris Reeve or even a Rick Hinderer knife. And so from the perspective of, why that was part of the Holy Trinity, there's some definitely the whole deployment. It's just one of those where, for myself, it's never been part of a Holy Trinity because I think value of a knife is something that's important to me. I don't mind spending some money on knives, but I don't want to get something the exact equivalent unless I'm paying for some artistic license, like actual, individual custom, that sort of thing. That's a totally different story. But we're talking about essentially production knives, and I just think that they're like $200 overpriced. So it's just something I'm not going to send my way, and I would definitely consider buying it used if it came available at what a fair price is. Chris Reeve definitely is known for exactness of manufacturing, and these used to be a little bit more affordable. They have gone up with the recent price increases and inflation. Definitely would be considered a knife of excellence. That if the old one and done. This is the Sabenza. You could get an Inkosi. I actually happen to prefer the Inkosi, but that's the other part of the triad. And Rick Hinderer, the one that I'll say that has really done a lot more in terms of innovation of new designs. I think Chris Reeve has maybe like the Pacific fixed. I've seen a couple other fixed blades, and as far as I know, the Unimzon, the Nkosi, and the Sabenza. There may be more, but Rick Hinderer definitely has made a lot more different models and a lot more variation. In fact, let me pause it here and just go grab one of them. Actually, I'll grab a couple. So this is the Maximus, a dagger slash bayonet style. Definitely very different. Still frame lock and a lot of the DNA of it, but quite different. And then you have this kind of tiny one, the half track, and of course, just like the other models or other brands, all sorts of different blade shapes and so forth. But the half track is definitely you know something quite unique in terms of when you look at some of the DNA of kind of a harder use titanium frame lock. You don't think of one that has like a 2.85-inch blade. So yeah, I would at the top of the triad. So I guess here's what I defined. As far as the Holy Trinity for myself, it's really, and I think all of those original makers, designers, fit into this mold. They basically engaged in production manufacturing, so a lot of people can get those knives. By the way, this is the Nkosi, the Tanto blade, from Chris Reeve Knives. I think one of the greatest knives ever made. With a great but stout hollow grind and all the modern comforts and accoutrements. So let me get back to that. All of them basically created production knives in such a way that they could get these knives into the hands of many people. They weren't just individual custom makers. So I think that definitely comes into the triad of, or the modern Holy, the Holy Trinity, so to speak of. They were higher end knives, used higher end materials. That's still the case for all three. I know even Strider has moved to MagnaCut knives. Good for them. In all honesty, they're beyond S30V, which is a great thing. And Chris Reeve as well. Likewise, Hinderer, though they've tended to kind of follow what their strengths are. S45 VN is a little bit better than their MagnaCut, from I don't know why, but they seem to tend to have gone back to that. Not a problem, but so there's an established base of production in the USA, able to produce a large number, and able to get them into the hands of people, and they're reasonably priced. They're not like $1,000 customs where you're gonna pay $1,000 for a custom, and that's kind of the range that you're entering into when an individual human goes and makes one of these. So I guess that would probably be kind of the basis, and also they definitely had innovations. There were definitely innovations. The tri-weight system, Chris Reeve with the oversized washers, ridiculously oversized. In fact, the washer size on the Nkosi is gigantic, and it also has pockets to basically take in oil, to help lubricate it. Like I said, there's the thumb hole opening on an actual Mick Strider. There's the ergonomics of it, the leading front choil on there. Things like that definitely are a definite big part of it is also design. So I'm going to talk about two other separate triads. One that I didn't quite make my top three of the modern Holy Trinity, and then I'm going to talk about what I really think are the three that, for me, I'm interested in hearing other people's thoughts on this too. Is what other people's modern Holy Trinity would they say in there? So I'll pause here, put these away, bring out the next set of knives of the second. I'll call it the second Holy Trinity that I would put in, but not the current modern one. Okay, the first of my runners-up is going to be Ken Onion. This is the leak. Ken Onion was at Kershaw forever and a day. I don't know that he has... I know he started a new line. I forgot what it's called. It's like Ships Ahoy or something. I don't know if they're producing it here, if it's being made foreign. But Ken Onion worked at Kershaw and was a staple with them. Brought in 14C28N as a stainless steel. The Kershaw Blur was my very first knife. I've since given it away. It was kind of my first kind of good knife. I want to say like 15, 18 years ago. Invented speed safe. Again, it kind of goes with innovation is one of the things that the first Holy Trinity was there. And I do think Ken Onion definitely, it's undeniable in a time when when automatics were made illegal, the speed safe, which is assisted, but requires, it basically was not considered automatic. And I really have Canyon as one of the second part of, the second place folks. Let me go ahead. And the next one I had was, and this is somebody who never, again, doesn't produce mass numbers. This is Les George. This is the automatic Rockeye. The Rockeye is the custom one. This is the Rockeye automatic from ProTech, which is based on the VSEP, or the VSEP is based on the custom Rockeye. So you can kind of see the design language and everything is essentially there. It's just that this is a manual knife, and the Rockeye, this particular one is an automatic, but the custom one was, and then you have the custom one was, I don't know what I was going to say. Oh, the custom one was called the Rockeye. And then this is the ES, or the short-bladed Rockeye, the automatic version of the ESV. The ESV is extremely small VSEP. So you got a VSEP, you got the little tiny one. It's essentially this format, and it's just not automatic, so it's a manual. This one I love in terms of the ProTech way they did it. So Les George would definitely be one of those. He's by a mile one of my top 5 designers. He does do production, made in the USA, but he does small batch. He hasn't built production facilities and so forth like the original Holy Trinity. And like I said, Ken Onion didn't necessarily do that, but worked at a company, Kershaw, and really helped grow them on the map to where they're one of the top USA companies, if not the top USA maker. Well, I guess maybe Benchmade would be above them. So Les George definitely would be part of my second or runners up there, and then my third would be Greg Medford with Medford Knife and Tool, and this is the 187 DP and the en belay. The Greg Medford definitely was an innovator in bruiser, thick knives by a decent mile, built production capabilities, improved. As far as innovations, I don't know, I think some of them are mainstream, but by a mile in terms of consistent production of washer-based knives that are hefty, solid, and in the realm of ones that would go up against basically a fixed blades, I would say, before the triad lock. I think Medford is definitely in that conversation. For me, the second list. Okay, the first of my modern triad, Holy Trinity, 80-10, add 5, 80-15, and add 5 more, and you get 80-20. So, made and designed under cold steel, but then the one of the key parts of a triad is that you go forth and you make production knives on your own. And Demko, Andrew Demko, is definitely part of my modern triad. The funny thing is he invented the triad lock. That is not an intentional pun, but I guess it is a semi-intentional pun. So yeah, the triad. He is the inventor of the triad lock. Basically, it's a lockback knife that also utilizes. We'll get that. That also utilizes a pin back here, so that it literally has a pin and a back lock on it. It was prior to the shark lock, the strongest locking mechanism ever known. Cold steel. He designed so many knives, fixed blades, and otherwise. Also, he's got the Demko, the Armiger, and then also the other one. I forget what it is, but it was his first one in Magna Cut. Price has always been not ridiculous for Demko knives. And the Scorpion lock. This is very similar to the Glenn Klecker lock, which is, I call it kind of a notchback lock. Very innovative, very strong locks. And then ultimately, when he built his own brand for himself, that was kind of one of my requirements, and it makes sense, is this shark lock here. So it's actually very clever. It uses a coiled spring back there, and then it basically lays this nice piece of metal on top of it. Super strong, but it also meets the needs of what modern knife nuts like is, I won't say fidgetiness, but simplicity of use. you can pull this out of your pocket one-handed, deploy it, utilize your knife, and put it away one hand, put it right back in your pocket one-handed. So modern accoutrements, as I call it. This 80-20 is excellent. And then what followed suit, and that to some degree, this does tend to follow a lot of the folks that I'm going to be covering here. Other than Emerson. Emerson's are all made of 100% in the USA. But this is made in Taiwan. This is the 80-20.5. And it was a smaller, more easy carryable in terms of legal in more places. A little bit easier in the pocket. Very thin. It kind of is just a little bit easier to carry. And so that's kind of for the EDC crowd. But it has it's scaled extremely well. So even though this one was made in Taiwan, this is kind of one of those small EDCs. If I could only have one ever, it would probably be the 80-20.5 in terms of small EDC. There's probably a couple other Spydercos as well. Maybe the PM2, I guess, if that would be in the similar range. Might be one of those where the only knife I would ever have. By the way, this scale job is done by, it was done by, what's his name? I know him as Noftastic, Rodney. Sorry, I was like, I know Noftastic. But yeah, check out Noftastic EDC. In fact, I'll probably link him. He just does such a good job and is an amazing machinist out there. So yeah, he that's his own pattern called the spiral frag pattern. He actually put this on a cast loader crenellated backspacer, did the anodizing, blurple. Excellent. So Andrew Demko is unquestionably, for me, part of the modern triad. Ernest Emerson, number 2. Again, innovator, has the Emerson Wave, licenses it out to other models. Spyderco Matriarch is one that I can think of that I have that on. And this is the Elvia. You can get this in with wave or without Emerson disc. Again, it's very interesting. A lot of these folks come from military backgrounds, and Ernest Emerson was definitely one of those people who literally said, I want this, as a fighter in the military, these are the things that I need and want, and he literally designed them. So he designed knives, and the U.S. military actually took some of those knives and extended them as, oh yeah, these are, specific type of knives for certain soldiers, certain, specialties and that sort of thing. So yeah, and what I also really like about Emerson is he doesn't design them all. This wasn't designed by him. I think this one was. This is the CQC7. This was definitely one of the earlier ones, and it's kind of a standard and stable. Just doing all sorts of stuff, making it easily serviceable. Basically screwdriver. You don't need a whole lot more else. The Nylotron washers, dirt's not going to get in there, and if it does, washers are going to do better. The Nylotron is, it's essentially, it looks to me like a Teflon, but a very thick Teflon. The pocket clip, and yeah, this is one of those where, again, there's that wave feature. It is innovation, production. Emerson's are definitely made all in the USA, but also Emerson engages other designers. I forget who the designer of this particular one is. I haven't done the review and full carry on it, but the Elvia is a classic example of wicked cool, modern, new stuff. This particular one is a Pical, meant to be held like this. And so for me, definitely I would say Ernest Emerson would be part of the modern Holy Trinity. All right, so the last but not least in my Holy Trinity modern is Sal Glesser himself, the designer of the Shaman here. You can see his maker's insignia there. A designer of the compression lock, and for several reasons, I might say this has got to be one of the top 10 knife designers. He actually started out with basically making the sharp maker, realizing that there was a need for people to be able to sharpen their knives in the kitchen. And so the knife sharp maker, which is great for, in the modern world of modern knives, is still just sharpening up your knives, 15 to 20 degrees. So if you're in that range, it works really good. Shaman, PM2 with his son Eric. It's like the Delica, the original use of backlocks. And then one of the things that, kind of like Emerson, is the Spyderco is famous for trying all sorts of funky metals. LC200N, things that are completely, essentially rust proof. Pushing metals to the limit, Rex 45, Maximet, Rex 121, working with designers and funky designs, not always working out, but some of them, sometimes you end up with an absolute gem. Basically the Spyderco Spidey Chef, I'll put the Delco way, is for me probably the best camping knife, as a folder goes, maybe ever. You can fish with this. It'll gut a fish just nice. It will cut your food. It definitely has amazing use. It's like I said, it's not going to rust. You can leave it out overnight. It's tough enough that this is like if you just needed a folding knife for camping, the Spidey Chef is probably the one to go to. You're not going to want to be splitting wood and that sort of stuff. That's what a fixed blade is for. So the Spidey hole, the use of backlocks, the invention of the compression lock, the engaging of modern designers, Alistair Phillips, the Kapar, which I think is, I don't have one in front of me, but it's kind of like the best Spyderco produced knife in my opinion, maybe ever. And so Sal Glesser, and like I said, he engaged his son to basically make sure, and Eric has carried on his legacy and done some of his own awesome designs. I think he did the Manix, or at least the Manix 2, or the Manix XL, where it's just Eric, and you'll see Eric Glesser's little insignia is the little E, and then there's the Sal. So yeah, I'd have to say he passed it on and made sure that somebody's there. Kind of like Chris Reeve did with Tim Reeve as well on the original Holy Trinity, is making sure that somebody is there to carry that torch, and I really do appreciate that. Sal Glesser, definitely number 3 in my modern Holy Trinity. So what does the Holy Trinity mean? It literally means nothing. Whether it be Mick Strider, Chris Reeve, Rick Hinderer, they all basically pushed the game for knives. They pushed the steels, they pushed the manufacturing methods. They, the modern materials, the construction, locking mechanisms, the various sorts of things, washers versus bearings, those sorts of things, the tri-way system, tactical Legos, as Nick Shabazz says from Hinderer. Was it a valid start and maybe naming of them as the Holy Trinity? Sure, you can name them whatever you want. They could be your 3 favorite designers, 3 favorite manufacturing companies. Ernest Emerson. Would Ernest Emerson be part of a modern one? Les George, entirely possible. Ken Onion, absolutely. These, again, giants in the industry, who made amazing strides. Again, innovation, production, understanding what people want and building those and need, and building those into their designs. Again, into their production, pushing limits, pushing boundaries. So, what the Holy Trinity means, it literally means nothing. Andrew Demko. Oops, I forgot. I forgot. Medford was in there actually, and so I did forget that one. What was my third one? Let's pause here. There it was. Sorry. Yeah, Medford was supposed to be part of second place. Ernest Emerson was one of my finalists here, and then Sal Glesser. You could take any one of these. I'm definitely very interested to know if you got anywhere near in this towards the end of this. I appreciate the like and subscribe, but more than anything, I'd love to see what manufacturers, makers, designers that kind of meet all these things. They push boundaries, developed new things, invented stuff, made cool stuff. Brian Nadeau is one of my favorite, in fact, probably top 5 favorite designer. And he makes customs that are just ridiculous. They're $5,000, $10,000. But he does outsource most of the production of things that he wants to get in a lot of people's hands to Riyadh over in China. I don't really have a really problem with that because I buy most all of them and I love them. But if you're going to be part of the Holy Triad, you kind of have to center manufacturing in the USA. You can have some like Spyderco, we know, does some in Taiwan. They also have their bird line in China. Emerson is USA. Demko for the 20.5 has had to go to, again, so that everybody could get these, to go to Taiwan. So my modern Trinity, I think, definitely it's fair to say that This is a pretty amazing little triad here of Emerson, Demko, and Sal Glesser. Let me know what you think below. Appreciate it. Take care.